My lords, today we discuss the Curator Order, a network of ancient and arrogant aliens who exist simply to learn and absorb the knowledge of everything. A noble mission indeed. We've had dealings with the Curators previously. We've even exchanged cultural details for physics or engineering research. This relationship has benefited us reasonably well over the past decades. Recently, however, we've made a discovery that may impact this. Dr. Gates and Dr. Chase aboard the science vessel Templar made the following report regarding a barren planet they discovered in the western regions of our space, covered in a thick layer of glass and metal, perhaps hinting at some sort of cataclysmic event in its past. The science team discovered clear signs that this world was indeed once densely populated. Whatever destroyed the civilization that once lived here did an extremely thorough job. Very few useful details have been found on the surface. However, detailed scans have detected several large cavities deep below the surface that may have once supported life. It is assumed that the civilization was either subterranean by nature or took to the caves in an attempt to avoid orbital bombardment. Dr. Gates and Dr. Chase are setting up dig sites in order to explore the world further. Excavations of the subterranean complex have begun. The doctors report the complex is reasonably well preserved. The discoveries so far point to remnants of an underground, well-advanced society, and the complex is quite vast. It is likely that upwards of 10 million people once lived here. Many of the ruins are in surprisingly good condition. Dr. Gates discovered what he is describing to be a library of encrypted data crystals. Dr. Chase is running decryption protocols in order to understand what information we can gather from these crystals. Dr. Gates reports that a team member, a Riley Poole, who was exploring the ruins, recently disappeared. After a short search, the team found a skeleton that seems to be human, although it is in a rather odd state of decomposition. The team are in no doubt the remains belong to Mr. Poole, but they remain baffled as to how the body decomposed quite this quickly. Caution is urged as the team continues to explore the subterranean tunnel complex. Dr. Chase has finished her decryption programs and translated the data held on the crystals discovered in the library. As she interprets them, it appears that the planet was indeed in trouble. It was once the center of a prosperous civilization known as the Alani Foundation. At some point in the Alani's development, they became more and more obsessed with the hoarding of knowledge. This obsession grew until it became the single purpose of the Foundation's populace. It appears that even procreation became an afterthought. As a result, their population began to fall rapidly. And alarmed by their dwindling numbers, their leaders attempted to find a technological solution. Rather than attempting cloning or alternate methods of procreation, the Alani opted to attempt to try for immortality. Ambitious aliens indeed. The crystal records become much scarcer around this point. Perhaps they were too busy with their quest for immortality to keep up the records. However, at this point it does not appear the civilization had been forced to move underground, nor had whatever cataclysm occurred on the world happened yet. Upon translation of the final crystals, it appears that we have our answers regarding the Alani's attempts at immortality. It appears that far from achieving immortality and everlasting life, the Alani created a terrible plague. A swarm of microorganisms capable of multiplying rapidly and almost instantaneously devouring any organic matter upon which they came into contact with. It is now assumed that this organism is what killed Mr. Poole. The resulting cataclysm wiped out much of the Alani population. The survivors splintered into two groups. One, unwilling to give up their homeworld, took to the subterranean depths and created the caves and the data library from which we found the crystals. They recreated their civilization in airtight pockets so as to attempt to avoid the plague. However, this solution ultimately proved to be unsustainable in the long run. Eventually, the microorganism found its way into their habitats, and the caves that were supposed to be their sanctuary quickly became tombs. The other group instead went into an exile, enforcing a planetary-wide quarantine and utterly obliterating the surface of the world, rendering it uninhabitable. They henceforth began living on orbital stations and habitats, dedicating themselves to the lost knowledge of their civilization, and eventually, after several millennia, morphed into the founders of the Curator Order. With the data crystal hoard fully uncovered, this leaves us with a number of decisions to make. Firstly, I suggest the information may be leveraged to greatly benefit our future research agreements with the Curator Order. For if the galaxy was to learn that they effectively created a microorganism plague and then proceeded to glass a planet in a failed attempt to clean up the mess, will surely shine a negative light on them. Furthermore, we should pull on the thread of immortality. After all, if these data crystals are correct, they were indeed a dying race, and although small in number, they still live. Perhaps they did achieve immortality, or at least found a method of greatly extending their natural lifespan. A technology such as this would be most valuable indeed. The second order of business concerns the microorganism plague. Drs. Gates and Chase inform me that they have been able to capture and contain the organism. The question at hand is whether or not we attempt to control the plague and weaponize it where possible, or we simply lock it away for future study. That decision, my lords, is ultimately yours to make. However, I should make you aware, this report did find its way into the hands of Special Military Branch 377, specifically the hands of a Major Solus. 377 has been tasked with alternative strategies regarding the war with the Prethoryn Scourge. The Major has personally requested a sample of the microorganism plague be made available to him and his task force. One can only assume what he means to do with the organism. In any case, my lords, this decision is yours alone to make. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to hear another story, please click the video on screen now.